Welcome guys and girls to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to learn one of the most popular system design for interviews as well as real-world projects, three-tier architecture. So in this lecture, we are going to learn the system design of three-tier architecture, and then I'm going to go over some of the questions you can expect during your interview. So first things first, why is this called three tiers? Because this architecture has three distinct layers or tiers. So the user accesses your application using a front end or presentation layer, and this presentation layer interacts with application layer or backend, and this application layer or the backend saves and retrieves information from the database as needed. These three distinct layers or tiers, presentation layer or front end, application layer or back end, and database, is the reason this architecture is called three tiers. Now let's focus on the presentation layer. So one example of presentation layer could be, let's say, Amazon.com website where you can browse different items, and this website could be running at Nginx or Apache web server, and there are multiple other options as well. But at the end of the day, this is a presentation layer where your users access your application. So let's say in the Amazon.com, the user liked one item and wants to add it to the cart. So as soon as the user clicks add to cart, so here you have to insert this information into a database, as well as you have to check some business logic such as where does the user live, whether the user is eligible to buy, credit card information, etc. So as soon as you click add to cart, the presentation layer calls the application layer or the backend where a bunch of business logic is running. So one example of this layer is your Java code running in a jar file, and this jar file is running in Apache Tomcat application server or Oracle Web Logic server. But you don't have to remember the Nginx, Apache, Oracle, etc. I'm just giving an example. At the end of the day, it could be any software where you can run this backend layer. If that's just an API running on container or running on Lambda, that's totally fine. Moving on to the database, you have many choices. Some of the popular ones include Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, but then beyond that you have your NoSQL database such as Cassandra, DynamoDB, etc. So going back to our three tiers, you can run your web server on virtual machine or Amazon EC2. You can run the app server as well in Amazon EC2, and the app server can communicate with the database. And both of these EC2s will have some IP address. So your interviewer might ask you, how will the web server access app server, and how will the users access this web server from the internet? Because you must not hard code these IP addresses into your application, because this EC2 can go down. You might need to scale, so it's not reliable to go by one IP address because that IP address can change. So you communicate between web server and app server by using load balancer. So the user can access this web server by using the DNS attached to this elastic load balancer, which is pointing to the web server. And in case of, let's say, any website, in our case, let's say Amazon.com, you can map Amazon.com to the DNS of this front-end elastic load balancer, which will point to the web server. And the web server will point to another application load balancer, and that application load balancer will point to the app server. What are some of the single points of failure in this architecture? So the elastic load balancer are managed by the cloud provider and inherently highly available. So even though you see one icon of elastic load balancing, under the hood, this elastic load balancer is running in 3 different availability zones, so it is not a single point of failure. However, this web server and app server, which is running on single EC2s, is a single point of failure. And same thing is true for this database. So how will you make this architecture scalable and highly available? You do that by putting the EC2s for web server and app server under a auto scaling group, and you should have at least 2 web server and 2 app server EC2s in 2 different availability zones. In the auto scaling group, you can mention the minimum desired number of instances running, and that's where you can set how many minimum web server and app server you want to run. Now the interviewer might ask you about network security. How are you going to secure this kind of design from the network perspective? So you want to put as many components in the private subnet or green zone as possible. And only thing that should be on the yellow or red zone or public subnet is the elastic load balancer fronting the web server so that internet traffic can come to that load balancer. So the top load balancer you put on public subnet, and rest of the components you put on private subnet. You can also implement network security constructs for AWS, such as network access control list, security group on the EC2s to control traffic. You can also integrate AWS WAF or Web Application Firewall with load balancer that lets you monitor web requests and protect your web applications from malicious requests. You can use AWS WAF to block or allow requests based on conditions that you specify, such as IP addresses. You can also use AWS WAF pre-configured protections to block common attacks like SQL injection or cross-site scripting. Now let's turn our attention towards the database tier. So you can ask a lot of probing in this area. One area you can expect a lot of deep dive is whether you want to choose SQL versus NoSQL. So refer to that SQL versus NoSQL lecture on the talking points and how to answer that. And try to push the conversation towards AWS native databases, because AWS native databases offer out-of-the-box high availability, fault protection, and replication. If you run your database on EC2, you have to manage all that. So that's a rabbit hole you want to avoid in your interview. So let's say we are using Amazon Aurora for our 3-tier architecture. So you might get this question, how are you going to make this database highly available? That's the beauty of AWS native databases. Out of the box, Amazon Aurora is multi-AZ. So one copy of data is saved into multiple availability zones. And even if one availability zone goes down, Aurora will automatically promote another copy of the data as the primary instance. So this multi-AZ feature is within a single region. But if you want resiliency beyond a single region, you can use global database feature, which replicates your database into another region. Keep in mind, this 2 feature is true for DynamoDB as well, which is AWS's flagship NoSQL database. Another area you might get probed is database optimization. How do you handle high traffic? How can you optimize the database? Amazon Aurora provides a read replica, so you can use these read replicas to handle read traffic while the write traffic goes to the primary instance. You can also introduce caching layer using Amazon Elasticache, and you can also utilize caching in different layers of the architecture. So please refer to the caching lecture for details on this. And beyond that, there is always traditional query tuning for your application. Hey folks, Raj here. This is just one of my lectures from my full system design course. The full course is over 7 hours long. It covers topics from basics, intermediate to advanced. It comes with a certificate of completion, and it also has a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you are not satisfied, you get your money back, no questions asked. In the full course, we go over all the system design concepts needed to design your real-world applications, as well as answering system design interview questions. The course also has up-to-date quizzes to test your knowledge. After you master the system design concepts, we learn how to implement those concepts to create modern applications, such as 3-tier architecture on Kubernetes serverless EC2s, content-based messaging system, Tinder, Uber, Amazon, Fandango, IoT design, Shopify, TinyURL, WhatsApp, and more. This newly released course is currently bestseller in Udemy. I have included a $9.99 discount coupon in the description. Also, in the spirit of learning, I have created $9.99 discount coupon for all of my courses, so check them out in the description if interested. As always, thanks for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, please click subscribe, ask me any questions in the comment section, and share this channel with your friends and family. Alright, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys and girls in the next video.